Now you can stop. If you have any questions, we can tell you about the details about cost of the classes and our pilot based on the scheduled in the project.
Okay.
And so this bottom will.
I think we can
talk first.
Talk first.
Okay. So excellent. Thank you. So first of all, you did a great job populating the universe, and you can see it's sort of like once you start to do that, you see how many elements there are. You probably could have come up with more. Yes.
Yeah.
So just a technical note, you were sticking a little bit to the categories that we used during the assignments. Obviously, there's more, right? So going forward, and I'll show you tomorrow, we'll be made by the end of the week. We'll be having a tool in the course that you can use to make this anything, okay, right? And it's a visual sort of tool, so you can expand this. You don't have to stick to those specific categories, this is just to sort of get this started, right? So excellent job on that. One thing that I would suggest you consider including in your technology unit list, although as engineers what we usually think about is educational science, okay? Because technology is also science, right? So there's a whole world, okay, of understanding. It's usually not the same journals, okay? We have to go a little bit to the social science thing, but there's a whole world of understanding how humans learn. Okay, there is, it ranges from neurology to cognitive science, all of that. So I would make that also a big component in your educational universe because you want to have a scientific basis of education rather than just the experiential basis, right? And that's going to be something when we talk about competition and setting you apart and keeping an edge. That's something that I think a lot of people do not. Really, it's not easy, but because you're marrying very different worlds, and not a lot of people can do that.
Because of it's not so easy. We have actually included it in our universe, but I highlighted this as a white book because we do not have expertise right now, and it needs a lot of time to make a research in it.
Right.
Because some laboratories around the world making researches, but you can't tell the one leader or the universal way to make it.
Yeah, but I mean that's where once you start your own research in that field and you become a little bit of an expert on educational theory or the different stages, because the learning is different at different stages of from childhood to adolescence, okay? Whether what kind of gamification, for example, is appropriate at what kind of level, and so I'm just saying you don't have to understand it all now, okay? It's long, it probably takes a while to understand this, but to include it and to keep also expanding this as part of the process.
We can help with even the category kids, for example, from 5 to 17 we put right now, but actually there would be different settings every 2 years.
Exactly. So eventually you want to capture that, but that's why we're building. We're at the beginning of building all the stuff. But I think you did a very fantastic job in calculating it widely.
So what's your next steps for trying to figure out how to narrow the uncertainty going forward? What do you think you're going to look at next?
Could you switch to technology, yes, so as I told, we have competences here, and we have found the solutions here. We have to match them. As far as we know, no one in Russia and in the United States doesn't have such link between the approaches. So, we would like to have a pilot version based on ScratchDI. So, it's an online platform with learning different blocks and technologies, and you move forward to creating actually the systems yourself, not from the ready blocks, but from the
scratch.
From scratch, actually, yes.
Okay.
So it's our pilot.
Okay, so there's more for you to learn technologically by combining those spaces. And then on the market side, what do you think you're going to be doing?
You have to decide which business model would be the most effective for the beginning. Because we have actually competitors, even in Russia, facing just kids and kids and parents link. We have also an example trying to link students and companies, but it's not so successful right now. And we have to make a choice. You see, the business model would be also depend on the country where we put it. So if you are talking about, for example, Finland, it would be definitely B2G market. And it's one of the questions to you, actually, if you would like to scale the platform, should we think about the differences in each country, or it should be a unique platform?
Yeah, so we faced that a little bit in that when I talk about the water initiative, which I'll talk more about tomorrow. So you end up in this situation where I like the way you're thinking, by the way, because what it says is you're really a service company, right? Because what it means is that you think about a particular, yeah, and you think about a particular, education system in a particular area, and you know it's different from another one, right? So it suggests that your real value is being able to design educational tools for those particular regions, right? If you can do that efficiently, then you probably can be pretty unique. Because like you said, most people are probably thinking, I'll build one thing and just try to sell it to everyone.
So we're talking about customization to each market in an efficient way?
Well, exactly. But you can't, so the two extremes are going to send you somewhere else. So if you create one thing for everybody, that's just normal, I'll just see where it sticks, right? However, you can't afford to customize completely everywhere because it's too expensive, right? So the water initiative faced the same thing. And what we realized was that you need to look at these markets in some sort of fundamental parameter space. In other words, you look at Finland, right? You could probably break it down into like there's maybe 3 or 4 features of that market, right? And you say, well, Russia is similar in 2, but different in the other 2, right? And then what we started to realize was that if you look at the world, then there's certain archetypes where you don't have to repeat everything all the time. You see what I'm saying? Like, so the trick is to efficiently learn in each one of those markets, how to quickly figure out what are the similarities to other markets and what are the differences. And then you can get very efficient about knowing what to deploy because you might have, like sort of these modules set up that address particular aspects of that education market. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So maybe just sort of like to an example, like I don't know, I'm just making this up on the spot. Okay, we could say, all right, one parameter. I don't know if it's the one that makes sense, but it could be like, what's the parenting model? Okay, so different countries have different kinds of parenting styles that are sort of prominent. Okay, the second one is like, what is the government sort of educational funding model? Okay. What is the model of providing, some places have for smaller kids, they have guaranteed places so that the parents can go to work, and centrally organized, and some people don't, right? And so on and so forth. So this entire infrastructure, from inside the family towards, to schools, towards, ecosystem and what's rewarded and what's not rewarded, who makes what decision. You can come up with like a set of parameters where you say like, okay, well this place, falls here, okay? And then you can, from that you can sort of see like, what can I have, where are the fundamentally different segments? That would be like then a way where you kind of go towards a market segmentation, right? So you translate that into the market segmentation, but obviously it's at your specific innovation, right? And that's a learning and iteration process, and it keeps changing it until you sort of get it get enough experience, you know, with all that to sort of like get it right.
One of the things for the further research, we have discussed the franchising model, just to allow companies with deeper expertise on the separate market develop the platform again. So
you could do that too. You know, partly some of this, as you go forward, see the wonderful thing about doing it this way is that you actually see there's maybe different options even, right? Because at any one point in time, you can't tell, of course, until you move forward, right? What that means is at some point you have to just decide what you want to do, right? We don't teach that out in the class here because, you know, it's like there's only so much you can teach, but choice matters for what you guys want to do, right?
We understand that everything means nothing.
Right, right. So, you know, at some point you have to look at the best paths, you know, which mean doing this process, which path seems like the best. And then, you know, suppose that you say, well, I'd rather just focus on, I'm just making this up, but Finland and Russia, and, you know, we'll franchise and we'll figure that out because, you know, we'd like to get more resources, but maybe, you know, we're more local and we like to do that. Or maybe it's the other way around. You say, you know, we don't want to franchise because we really want to become the worldwide education company or something, right? And, you know, you'd find paths probably in those two things, and part of it is what do you want to do?
It also builds a question of corporate structure. And
sure, yeah.
Absolutely.
Lifestyle business versus, you know, like big corporation, you're not kind
but
of...
it's, you know, but in terms of the business model, it's a bit early to tell that, okay? Because it's really going to be the market side. Once you have parameterized the market, once you've segmented the market, okay, that is going to influence, you know, the implementation choices. And you're going to have, as you see restrictions, you're still going to have choices. You want to always keep the maximum number of choices, okay, until you have a very specific and good reason to exclude it. Okay.
Well, and within the resources that you have.
Within the resources that you have, right?
You can't just keep on, I mean, if you have infinite resources, just keep on exploring forever, but of course it's not reality either,
Yeah.
right?
But so, you know, but so for example, your business, you know, your business model choice, you know, sort of like a bit early, you have to like learn about those choices, okay, and what kind of things, you know, influence that in that space, okay? But it's, you know, but without, you know, more market segmentation, you're not, it's impossible to make a choice, you just don't have enough information.
That's why we are planning to learn as much as possible on our pilot.
Right.
So
that's right.
Oh, by the way, this is also something that we had before, like, you know, you also have the advantage, like, you know, another technology that we had earlier in the morning, is that you can, you know, because you have the ability to rapidly prototype, okay, which is like, you know, like you can actually use the prototype, the rapid prototyping to get market information, right?
So you can see what works.
Right.
So we made a mistake, by the way, in TWI. I mean, it wasn't my mistake, but you know, I was trying, and this becomes organizational, so TWI had grown to a point where, to your point, I said, you just got to get the product out there. Like, we just have to, because we had narrowed it far enough, and we were running out of resources. I was like, we have to deploy something in order to get the information back, because otherwise we can't get any transactional experiences. Turns out I was not able to motivate some people in the company fast enough, and so we drained resources while we're still trying to make everything perfect. So I totally agree with you, which is that you, at some point, you know, if you're doing this in the real world, right, not in this class, deploying these pilots to figure things out can be a very effective way, especially with your particular thing here. You know, don't wait for it to be perfect. You know, just get out there and see what you can learn.
sure, we have additional advantage that actually our project is open source and it could be created in any of 450 fab labs around the world. So
exactly. So you can actually also have a broad audience. And the thing is, you know, also to Jin's point, okay, is that it's not a matter of like waiting, like if there is a, so we talk about like, you know, uncertainty. It's not a rigid thing about, you know, reducing the next highest uncertainty only and focusing all resources on that, because there's maybe something that is very, very cheap and easy to get, this information, right? So maybe it's not the most uncertain thing, the next uncertain thing, but it's worthwhile to get that quickly because you can get it in a day as compared to, you know, half a year, okay? But the thing is, you have to work on these things sort of in parallel. You know, while you work on with the longer term sort of, let's say, figuring out what the educational science tells you, okay? And that takes a while. You know, you might as well at the same time deploy prototypes, you know, and you know, look for other parameters that you need. So, you know, these things, you know, happen in parallel. You know, always within the constraints of the resources that you have in the team and the company or whatever.
Okay, yeah, may I ask you some questions?
Yes.
Okay. I'm from a Russian venture company, yeah, first of all, thank you very much for this presentation, and I'm really happy that such a project is participating in the program, because it's not, it has not only commercial value, not only commercial potential, but also potential of real influencing on the educational system of Russia in general. That's very important for us as a development institution to help launching such project as your one. But my question is not about the project itself, but about your team behind it. Do I get it right that the team that is represented in this very program is just a part of your broader team, right? No? So
we just meet each other.
There's representatives of all different companies. Yes, but all of us have expertise in several blocks. That is why our idea is actually well created. We have massive ideas of the end product, but we decided to choose this one because we have separate elements which match each other very well. That's why we can see the future in the combining our expertise.
So, in this case, how do you assess the competences inside your team? So, what are the gaps whom you want to maybe to invite to include in your team? So, because your product and your presentation, so very many market segments, many channels, many different strategies. So how do you want to focus on them using your team? And maybe how do you want to invite new members and maybe new partners? Maybe you want to do it as a network. So what is your strategy as creating a network/team, how to say, distributed team to realize this project?
It's just, I will tell you, there are some long-term aims of involving new specialists, such as the blocks in technology, which we, as you say, science. But there are some steps which we can do right now, and so based on Pavel's experience, we can already, what you can see on the table is already on the market. But you can boost the interest to such gadgets having educational methodology. Without it, it's just gadgets for geeks. So.
So mostly my idea, but I think it's a clever idea and everyone will appreciate it, is that we should use the kind of open source communities. So there are several communities, like makers communities behind FabLab networks and Space network, and we have a very big community from MIT Scratch, and you know this product, and we use it inside our programming system, and very big community about Arduino platform, and a very big community about the GNU Linux platform. So we just need to find out all these communities, and it seems that we will have enough resources to go worldwide.
So it will be a kind of crowdsourced team.
Crowdsourced team, yes.
So it's interesting
On the technology side.
Maybe on the market side too.
Okay.
Because we can use this network as our kind of agents in the countries and the structures.
I see he's introducing a new component that, you know, if you think about what Andreas and I are doing with this class, I mean, you guys joined up. Is it the first time you met, by the way?
Yes.
Or, yeah, because you were all over the Russia, right? Yeah, right. So what's interesting is, you know, what we're doing here, of course, is an education thing, which is to get you to understand the innovation process, right? And what you bring up is that, hey, you know, after this class, you know, where can things go from here, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something we haven't really considered. And I know you guys are just learning, right, about innovation. So it is an interesting thing that if, you know, we do things like this and there is interest in moving something forward, how do you shift now from just learning in the class, but hey, how do you build a real enterprise?
Yeah.
Right. And so what he really did was just introduce a new option for you guys, right, which is you're learning here. And he's saying, hey, there could be some ways to create something real out of this class if there was some group of people that were interested, right? So that's just, it's interesting because, you know, we're just focusing on education, but it could become real because here's something that maybe someone might want to have invested and spread in some way.
Yeah, definitely we are interested in
so that gives you guys
this, making an investment in this. So let's have a special talk about these opportunities later. So not so.
If you have 3 minutes.
Нет, пожалуйста, разбежите. У меня просьба. Я хотела бы, до того, как закончится программа, одного-двух человек из команды проинтервьюировать на тему ваших впечатлений о курсе. Поэтому давайте.
Из каждой команды?
Да, из каждой, абсолютно точно. Ну, по возможности. Поэтому, когда у нас закончится, в течение там, начиная с 6 часов, просто найдите меня. И это займет у вас 3-4 минуты. Просто чтобы понять впечатление о курсе, а потом мы сделаем такое видео, которое на будущее даст возможность людям понимать, о чем был курс, кому это может быть полезно. Нам нужна ваша обратная связь.
Можно нам 2 минуты, вот Павел нам буквально.
Okay, so it's some for free of the historical treatment that we use